almost at the top of the hour. Hey guys, how are you doing? Can you hear us and see us? I'm here with Janine. Let us know. I
Oh,
know you guys are talking about food. It's making me hungry. So, how are you doing? Can everyone hear us? I don't see anything. Yeah, there we go. Oh, that's you, Janine.
that's me. The
That's
safer
you.
one isn't live.
I know, right? Guys, can you hear us okay? No? Yes? All right.
Okay.
Yes, great. Excellent. I just want to make sure. I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I want to make sure. Hey, it's good to see you guys. Oh my gosh. Tracy from North Dakota is here. Sunday from LA is here. Marina is also in the LA area. Victoria is here from Portugal. Jessica, who's making German chocolate cake. That's very nice.
Mhm.
How sweet. Esme is from Orange County. Awesome. It's good to see you guys. So we're going to just get started in 1 minute. I want to ask you to share out the event, let everyone know who wanted to attend. So just grab that URL, let everyone know, your friends, your family, your Twitter followers, that we are getting started. Yay, thank you. It's good. I'm excited about it too, Jessica. I'm really excited. Oops, I keep going out of focus. So I was just telling Janine before we jumped online that she is filled with color, of course, right? Because of her latest episode or her latest issue, that she is covered with color, and I look like I'm going to a funeral. So I apologize if I knew, if I remembered that I was going to be talking to Janine, I would have gone a little more colorful. So
Well, you match your background too with the posters are very monochromatic. So
it is, yeah. I think my life is slightly more monochromatic than yours. So good. It's great to see everyone. Thank you. So I was wondering, how many of you in the audience today have ever read or subscribed to Uppercase Magazine? Would love to know how many people are true fans. So come on out, expose yourself, and let us know if you are an
oh,
Uppercase
thank you.
subscriber and or a fan. Excellent. You haven't read everyone? Nancy.
Hey,
Nancy's a
Nancy.
yeah, excellent. Good to hear. Yeah, so I had said that I have one issue here with me. She did point out that it's quite an old one, but
Yeah,
it's what I have. Yeah, these
this
are
is the
just,
current one.
yes.
37, and you have 13, so
I
that's
have 13.
a few
Yeah,
years ago.
I'm way
Yeah.
back. Yeah, yeah. I just don't have them all by my side, but you have them, so that's great.
Sure do.
Great, excellent. So we're going to get started here. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I appreciate you coming. I am Rachel from TypeEd, and we're here in the Typography Dojo with Janine Vangool. She's from Uppercase Magazine, calling in from Calgary. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Yeah.
How is the weather there today?
It's springy. It's nice, sunny,
Oh, wonderful.
finally.
Yay. I know. Nice. So, Janine, you're going to give us a little bit of a background and talk about who you are and your projects and all the things that keep you awake at night, I'm sure. And then you and I are going to have a little chat. And I would love to hear questions from the audience as well. If you guys have any questions, feel free to place them under the Ask a Question tab. It's at the bottom there. If you have any comments or just want to chit chat with everyone, feel free to use the chat bar, but we're going to field questions afterwards. So please add them to the Ask a Question tab afterwards. So,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Okay. So thanks for having me, Rachel.
You're
I'm going to switch over to my slides,
okay.
and so I won't see any of this conversation. But feel free to interrupt me, Rachel, if there's a specific question about what I'm showing.
Okay.
So I'll just do a little overview of who I am and where I came from, and then we'll pop back over here.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Great. Can everyone see the screen? Let us know in the chat. All right. Yes, great.
Good?
Let's get started.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So let's just go back to the beginning. But so I'm Janine, and I publish Uppercase. And the tagline that I have for Uppercase Magazine and pretty much everything that I do is for the creative and curious. So going back to when I was a kid, I loved books and paper, crayons, school supplies, like pretty much all the nerdy things. I loved school. I love homework. I really just like the idea of writing things in notebooks. I love my crayons and art supplies, all those colorful things. That's me when I was 5. It's appropriate that the photographer has me posed with my hands on a big book there. So even way back then, I was a very small publisher, and these are some of the publications that I used to make. Here's one from 1982, and it's called Janines Magazine for Kids. And it was a little stapled booklet that had activities and features. I had problem spelling, but you can kind of get the idea of what I liked. So the contents of this were games and fun and jokes and coloring. And here's another one. This is Janine's storybook with a couple of stories in there. And all of these books were illustrated and written on paper that had something on the other side of it, because my mom was an executive secretary and my dad was an engineer or a draftsperson. So there was always paper in our house that had other things on the back that they would bring home from work. Here's a little craft book. I call it an orange book, Things to Make. And it's kind of a meta project. It says, if you like making things, this is the book for you. And then I go on to explain how to make a little staple book, just like the one that I'm showing here.
That is so cute.
This is a crafts carry-all, which I had the nerve to trademark way back whenever this was. And it had 3 issues for October, November, and December. And they were like little ideas of magazines, although I call them a dandy mini book. And I used to make and sew things on the weekend and then draw little diagrams of what those things were and then publish these little things. And then I would kind of force my parents and my brother to sign them out of my little library, which was just a little box covered in some wrapping paper that I'd bring to birthday parties and stuff, and people would have to look at my books whether they wanted to or not. I think I put my name on everything. If I knew what a logo was back then, I probably would have had my own logo. So I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is like right in the middle of Canada. And when I was 18, I left home to go study at the Alberta College of Art in Calgary. And that was sort of by default. My dad just said, well, you can go study, but you have to be within a day's drive from Saskatoon. So he put his thumb on the map and then did the circumference, and that's where I ended up, was in Calgary. And at the Alberta College of Art, it was kind of an interesting experience, being from a smaller city to go to the big city. And I just remember people walking by. My parents and I were very straight-laced, and they're punk-haired kids with colored hair and everything, and they called me weird. I was so normal looking, I suppose. Anyway, when I was in college, I was curious about design and typography, and I studied visual communications, and that program was kind of half and half between graphic design and illustration. But I really knew going into college that I wanted to be a designer, in particular for print publications. I was just really focused that I just love books and publications, and that's where I wanted to be. So I had a real early interest in typography. And when I graduated from college, I did have a job at a real company for about 9 months, and that was a huge learning experience to be out in the world working for this company. It was doing signage projects, and really big signage projects, like for the local a sports stadium, for example, and doing the mundane task of setting up the signs for all the rows of seating and how far away the women's washroom sign was from the door, and all that kind of stuff. It was fairly tedious and boring. So I had the opportunity to do some freelance work about 9 months in, and I was unhappy with the job. And so I quit and started freelancing. And I met some really great people who were nice enough to take a very new person on board to do some interesting design projects. And I was able to do pretty much everything in the print designer's toolkit that I wanted to do. I did marketing materials and posters and logos and stationery and CDs, which kind of dates me. I did some websites and kiosks as well to kind of dip my toes in digital, but really I love print work. But I did that for about 12 years, and it was great and a huge learning experience. But I felt like after a while I was just doing things to make them look pretty, but there was not a lot of substance or utilization of my brain, and I thought I could do better. So I was thinking, what are my ideas? What do I want to do with my own creativity? So I opened up a gallery, books, and paper goods store in downtown Calgary. So in the front of this space, I had things for sale, and so I started designing products. So here's a line of greeting cards or typographic cards, and I sold other people's books and other stationery products. Sometimes I would make things by hand, so I made notebooks and I sewed some things. I hosted gallery exhibitions and started kind of curating shows with not only local artists, but people I was meeting on the internet. So I kind of dipped my foot into curating there. And in the first few years, I still had my design business in the back. So first few years of this Uppercase, as it was called, Uppercase Gallery, Books, and Paper Goods, it was really Vangool design and typography that was paying the bills and the rent, and the other part of it was kind of a big experiment. But I really loved it, and the more that I kind of had this entrepreneurial aspect, the more I loved it. And I just thought, oh, I really want to do more of this. So I did the next logical thing, which was to publish a book about William Shatner, which is a real strange one when you look at what I do now. But at the time, it was just a fun idea. It really fit with the idea of my gallery, which was just an open public space. People could come in and peruse art. And the idea for the Shatner show came about. My husband and I were driving across Canada and listening to a Ben Folds CD at the time. It was called Has Been, and it's a spoken word album where Shatner and Ben Folds are kind of riffing. It's a really good album, and we listened to it a lot on that trip because Canada's a large country. And by the time I got back, I had, like a gallery show about William Shatner would be really fun. And I found out that year he was going to be 76 years old. This was 10 years or more than 11 years ago. So, he's an old fellow, and he's also Canadian. I thought that would be real fun. So I thought, let's have 76 Shatners in this show. So I started asking people, inviting them to submit, and realizing this is going to be a really big project. So I should actually commemorate it in a book. So this is the first book that I published on my own, and figured out how to foot the bill and do the pre-orders and to get it all going. So it was a huge learning experience, and really spent a whole year thinking about William Shatner. And fortunately, he endorsed the project in the book. He didn't come to see it, but he is well aware of it. And we gave him books for his fan club, and it worked out really great. And then, so that really, I really got the publishing bug after that. And so these are some of the other books that I published in the first few years of Uppercase. So I'm still a small publisher all these years later, just publishing different things for a different audience. So Uppercase Magazine started in 2009, and I was really looking for a way to transition from out of doing client work to doing more of my own thing. And I had been doing some client work designing other people's magazines, but the ongoing one that I was working on, they've kind of, they'd been sporadic. Sometimes there were 4 years between issues. And they finally folded, and I thought, okay, the magazine part of my brain is available again. I'm going to make my own magazine. So I started it, and I called it Uppercase, since that was the name of my gallery, and I had kind of a bit of a blog following back then, and just started kind of compiling things that I love. So not only about graphic design, but also illustration and craft and just creative living. And at the time, it was a fairly unique idea to have an independent magazine, and certainly a magazine that was basically for graphic designers, but that explored all sorts of different aspects of creativity, was a unique concept. So I think designers can be inspired by more than just looking at other graphic design. I think it's really invigorating to see other things in other mediums. So I thought, I'll just launch a magazine and see what happens. And I really had no plan that it would be still going 10 years later, just about, but it keeps going. And I'm really grateful for that. And so oftentimes in the magazine, I go back to the topics that I've always loved. So this is an example of a cover from issue 11. This is an artist named Jem Chow, and she carves crayons. And this particular issue was about laborious art making projects as well as sharp objects. So it was just a really nice fit. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of shows the simple style that I have for the cover design of Uppercase. This is an example from issue 18 where I asked a collage artist, Sarah Bridgeland, to take past issues of the magazine and cut them up and create a collage for the cover of this particular one. The theme of this issue was collage. And now here's like my son Finley, and he was born a year after Uppercase. Mm-hmm. We look very similar in this picture. I just love it. So I don't have a clone, but I'm hoping someday he'll take over for me. But we are working together. We've just been working on this project called Little You. And it's a magazine, creativity for the young at heart. I had the idea back when he was 2 years old, and now he's in grade 2. So it's been a while in the making, but it's been great. This one it's printed and it'll be shipping next week. But so Finley helped me with this one in that I would ask him to say, cut me some shapes, and I'm going to use those as graphic elements throughout the magazine, or cut the letter U for me. Or he did some hand lettering and did some drawing and such. So those are part of the magazine, which makes it really special for me. Here's another picture. That's just the mock-up. And the cover, those are Surface Pattern and dolls by Susie Altman. And within Little You magazine, I'm playing with type and letters. My creative brief for myself in Little You is just to have fun.
That's a good
if something was feeling stagnant or like, oh, this is too difficult, or I don't want to do it, then I just scrap it and make it fun. And this is Susie's philosophy, so I was taking that to heart. And again, these colorful crayons is a theme in all my work, it seems. Another theme in what I like is typewriters, and I've had an obsession with typewriters going back to childhood, and I always would ask my parents and or Santa Claus for a typewriter for Christmas, but I never got one. So years later, when I had my own gallery in Art Central there with Uppercase Gallery, I bought a typewriter to use in the shop kind of as display, but also to type out my price labels and such. And once I had one, I just kind of I got the bug for typewriters, and I got lots of typewriters. I even sold them in my shop for a while. And investigating typewriters, I discovered there's a wonderful typographic world associated not only with the typewriters themselves, but the associated graphics and ephemera, memorabilia of typewriting. So this is the example of a typewriter ribbon tin. So when your ribbon was done and you needed a fresh one, if you weren't going to re-ink it yourself, then you could go to the store and get a tin with a ribbon in it, and they're just amazing graphics. So one led to more and more and more, and soon I was compiling all sorts of ephemera and print materials related to typewriters, and this obsession became a book project called The Typewriter: A Graphic History of the Beloved Machine. This book was, years and years of collecting, but about 3 years in the making of the actual book. And it's hardcover and lots of pages, and I wrote it and researched the images, and it was a true passion project, but because of this love of typewriters and typography. And throughout all this time, I keep publishing Uppercase, which is quarterly. And between those issues, I schedule in other projects. So on each of the magazines, there's a spine pattern that relates to the content within, and it's a a pattern that I designed specific for the magazine. And a few years ago, I realized I have a nice pile of different patterns here, and I pitched the idea to a fabric company to make quilt weight fabric. And so I've designed a few collections now of fabric. This particular one is inspired by a pattern that I had on issue 8, which was all about letterpress. So the idea of wood type kind of repeating in a nice pattern. And what made this one special is that's a typeface that I designed when I was fresh out of college in like 1995, 96, when Fontographer was the cool thing, and I was designing my own typefaces back then. So it was nice to be able to take something and reuse it in a way that I never could have anticipated.
That's great.
And here's some more of the fabrics from the first collection. And because I have this audience who read Uppercase Magazine, and they might not all be quilters, for example, but we all like making things and we can all relate to books. So this was a project showing how you could take my fabrics and make some beautiful books out of them. Here's the second collection that came out last year. And I'm working on the third one, which will be out in October, I think. And here, this is Feed Sacks, and this is a book I published in 2016. And it's part of the Uppercase Encyclopedia of Inspiration. And that was kind of like an offshoot from the magazine, in that I realized there's some certain topics that I would love to just really dive into. But within the magazine, there's only a certain number of pages, and the content is shorter and sweeter. So the encyclopedia concept was a way to pick some topics that I just love and want to immerse myself in and present them as books. And I call it, it's released in whimsical order. So it's not alphabetical, it's just whatever topic comes up next in line. So the very first one's Feed Sacks, and that one I did with Lindsay Call-McRae. She's the author of it, and I did all the visual research, and it's over 500 pages of these historical images of feed sacks. And if you're not familiar with those, from like 1930s to about 1960s, they were patterns that came on the cloth packaging of feed for, like, you know, cows and pigs and chickens, or on flour and other goods like that. And the packagers realized that when they could put the fabric with patterns on it, the housewives and farm wives would buy it and make clothing and quilts and stuff with it. So this goes through the whole history, and it's really extensive. Also part of that series is Stitchillo, and this one is creative expressions through thread and textiles. So it explores illustrators who use thread and sewing in their work, and then on the other side of it, textile artists who are telling stories through their stitching. And then the third one in the encyclopedia series is Botanica, and this is how florals and botanical things inspire graphic designers and entrepreneurs and illustrators and product makers. Plus there's some vintage ephemera thrown in there too, like seed catalogs and seed packets and things. So that's a gorgeous book that I'm really proud of. So this is the first batch of encyclopedia sets, and each one has a flap, a dust jacket that you can unfold and then refold into 4 different ways. So in effect, you could kind of style your book and have 4 different covers. So this shows the different variety you can have in each of your books. And I'm working on the next round of this series. Printmaker is the one I'm working on now, which is about stationers and letterpress printers and artists and entrepreneurs who are using the print medium to make things. That'll be out probably by fall. And then there's other ones in this series about quilting, vintage ephemera, which is one that I'm working on it now and always collecting things. So if you're out there and you have an amazing collection of ephemera, get in touch. Or if you love vintage things, also looking for people to participate in those. That's the cover or mock-up of Printmaker.
Ooh, looks nice.
Yeah, it'll be inky. And then this is the current issue of Uppercase, which, speaking of ink, is the CMYK issue. And so all the content relates to cyan, magenta, yellow, and black in one way or another, whether it's actually through print or just through the color selection. That was really fun to compile. Yeah, and so that was my spiel. And you can find everything you want at uppercasemagazine.com. And I'm going to unshare this now, right? So they can pop back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Janine. That was awesome. I don't know if you want to just take a look at the chat bar, but everyone is just like pouring out with love. I love it.
Okay, so close that, right? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
you have Botanica. Thank you. Oh yeah, Riley Cran. Yes, he is the type designer featured in one of my past issues. He's working on a typeface inspired by what he saw in my typewriter book. So
nice.
Look forward to using that in the magazine sometime soon.
I love that when designers work off of each other, get inspired from each other, and then there's new projects that arrive. So if you guys have any questions, please add them to the Ask a Question tab underneath. We have a couple questions. We have a little bit of time for me to ask questions, which is good because I have a lot of questions. Well, first of all, so I know you mentioned that people ask you how you sleep or if you sleep. You are constantly publishing every quarter the Uppercase magazine, and you seem to find time to still produce these encyclopedias and these beautiful books. And obviously, it's not just you. You're also working with a slew of designers and artists. There's partnerships there. So how do you manage it all?
Well, yes and no. So Uppercase day-to-day graphic design of everything that I put out is just me. So like I design the books and I lay out the magazine and I have a copy editor who, his name's Corey Baldwin, and he's excellent. And then my husband, Glenn, does customer service with fielding the questions about shop orders and that sort of thing. And then the contributors are people from around the world who write and provide the articles for the magazine, and the images are usually from the artists or the people profile themselves. And then I do hire photography occasionally and illustration occasionally. So I have like this wonderful roster of people who contribute to each of the magazines. But the rest of it is me. So I've just acclimatized. Like when I first started the magazine, I was doing the magazine and running my gallery shop and, doing other things. So there's always lots of things going on. And then once the magazine was a few years old, I guess I kind of got into the routine of it and understood when and where I needed to put my attention to it, and when there might be gaps where I could do other things. And so I've just slowly been adding more to my plate, partly because I just always have new ideas and I can't say no. And also because as a business, publishing magazines and books, I always have to have something coming out, because that's how the business runs, is new things and doing a successful project and selling those books and then moving on to the next thing. So it's because I love doing it and also because I have to do it.
Do you have a favorite point in that process?
It's always exciting to have some ideas that have been percolating in my mind for a while, and then finally just step into actually making them, and you can see them come to be. So Little You, for example, that's one I've been thinking about for a really long time, and that so long that I thought maybe it's never going to happen. Maybe I missed the chance to do it. I should have done it years ago, and I tried and it didn't work. But that one's one that I'm just really happy to finally see it nearly finished. But yeah, I really like the stepping off point when I'm just getting everything started and I can see that, yeah, I think it's really going to work, and you got that hopeful feeling, and you're not totally inundated with all the work yet. It's still all this excitement. That's an addictive part about it, I think. Yeah.
And this is a business question, but do you have a daily ritual that keeps you going on all the pistons that you have to keep working on?
I don't have a ritual. I have a routine. So like, you know, I get up and spend time with my son, and then I walk him to school and drop him off. And then I walk to my office, which is about a half-hour walk. And I think that's one of the most important parts of my day. It's just that half an hour of kind of space separation between home and going to the office and getting into like thinking about Uppercase stuff, and just, I listen to a podcast or music or something on that way. And I think that's like really important to my overall productivity in the day, is having that. And then likewise, when I walk home, I have that half an hour buffer of trying to kind of shut down my brain and think about other things. So that's a definitely important part of my routine.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so some type questions. So you've worked with multiple typefaces before. Do you have a favorite foundry? Do you have any specific type designer that you love watching?
Well, I guess I use a lot of fonts from Hoffler, whatever it's called now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Like Sentinel is the typeface of choice for the body for Uppercase Magazine. I like Archer as well. I use that in the Encyclopedia series. For Little U, this is just the mock-ups, I can't show you the inside, but Riley Cran's Mort Modern is a brand new typeface, and that features prominently in Little U as like really nice big typographic numbers and such. So that was very inspiring. Yeah, okay. I don't know. Yeah, those are the few main ones. I with the magazine, I don't change it up too often. Like I have a roster of typefaces that I use consistently, and I just pull from them when I'm designing the magazine. And every once in a while, I'll just inject some new thing. Just like having one brand new typeface will help kind of freshen things up.
Right. And also, how do you find your partners? So you sometimes work with artists and designers and type designers. How do you find them? Do they come to you? How does that
well, I'm always looking. My eyes are always open, so I find people that way. But also, I have amazing subscribers who are super talented. So if I have, I see someone who's subscribed and they have their own URL, I'm gonna go look and see who is this person, right? Or people who, they'll just send me an email and introduce themselves, or go through my submission forms where you can upload what you're doing. So I just get to know who's actually reading my magazine, and there are always amazing, talented people who are doing things that are interesting. So I just get to know them and try and reflect back to other readers. Hey, look, this reader is doing this amazing thing that you're gonna like. So really now all the projects are really kind of from the people themselves who enjoy reading what I make.
Great. I love that community that you're building there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just jump into the question tab underneath, and then we will address the ones in the chat bar. Okay, so Tara is asking, you started Uppercase in 2007, and the following year saw the demise of several print magazines. How did Uppercase survive and grow its subscription base, especially since that social media marketing was relatively new and untested?
Well, Uppercase Gallery started in 2005, but 2007 was when the first Shatner Show book came out, for example. And I had been growing up my blog. That was a thing to do back then, was to blog. And so I did have a modest following there and so that's like a social media, and via Flickr, if you remember the good old days of when Flickr was nice.
It's still around.
I know, but so that was the social media then, was Flickr. I saw that there were big magazines that I really admired that were just biting the dust, like Blueprint magazine from Martha Stewart. I love that one. It's just beautifully designed. And Domino magazine, the first iteration, was one that I used to look at a lot. And so when those were closing down, And then this independent magazine I had worked for was also shutting down. It was an opportunity to look and see, like, why didn't any of these work? And one, like the local one that I worked on, was reasons unrelated to like big business, but things like the Martha Stewart blueprint. Like, how can Martha Stewart not keep this magazine going? You know, it's beautiful. Why isn't it working out? And it's because of the advertising, you know, being reliant on big corporations to spend big bucks on their ads. And likewise with the, you know, the home, like interior design magazines, they're relying on ads too. So I guess I realized that I'm going to do a magazine. It's not going to have advertising as a factor in its success, and that it's going to be supported by its readers. So that was the model that I started out with. And there were some ads like in the early issues, and I did try to like have that as like supplementary, nice to have, but it never really worked out. But that's fine, because that was never where the support comes from. So the magazine is supported by subscribers. Like, that's the main way. There's no government grants or corporate sponsorship. It's like the readers themselves subscribe, and that's how I'm able to keep it going all these years. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's how it's worked out. And social media has happened over those years, and I've gone on social media selectively. Like, I don't really do Facebook if I can avoid it, but Twitter was really good for business when Twitter was pre-Trump.
Yes.
And now it's not. But now Instagram is where people find me. So I do what I can to nurture where the social media is working, because those are where the people who are interested in what I'm doing are. So those are certainly the internet. If it hadn't existed when I was launching my magazine, I wouldn't be existing now. Like, it's just because of that connection that we make virtually is where the love for print is as well. Like, it's kind of a funny relationship, but that's how it works out.
So you use social media to reach out, but it's actually your subscription base, your subscribers, your community that is strong enough that keeps you alive, that keeps a magazine going. And not only that, but the way you communicate, the way you design, the everything about the magazine holds them there as well. So I would say it's probably not just social media, but it's also, I mean, just the core premise of your magazine.
Yeah, what I create, I think, is it's everything I can possibly put into everything that I do. I put it into there. Like, I don't put something out that I'm not proud of, and I think that shows time after time. And it's particularly with the subscription model for the magazine in the very early years. I think because I was always consistent in getting the magazine out when it was supposed to be out, and that each one was just chock full of stuff. Like, there's a lot of content in everything that I make. And people just realized that I was serious, and that they could trust me, and that they could put their subscription dollars in and realize that they would be getting something for the year, that it was worth it. So
it's great. It's gone so long. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Tara, I hope we answered your question. If not, let me know. Some questions from the chat. Let's see. Marisol's asking, I'm curious, do you still have a physical gallery space, or do you mostly run your business online?
I don't have the gallery anymore. When my son Finley was born, I realized limited time, and I really wanted to focus on him and the magazine aspect. So, and also the building where my first gallery was sold, and it was going to be demolished, so it was time to move. So I moved here, which is a really nice office studio space. And I have events here once in a while, but I don't have like a gallery space anymore.
Okay. And Sunday is asking, do you handle all the print projects? Do you have one printer or multiple? Sunday, what does that mean? One printer. Oh,
printer.
one.
Yeah, I have printed a few things in China just out of necessity. Like the typewriter book is a huge hardcover tome, and it would be the only way I could do it was to print that in China. But all of my wonderful, like these things here and the Uppercase Magazine, I'm going to give a shout out to Chris Young at Prolific Graphics in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. They're the best. If
Yay.
you want a printer, you talk to Chris Young and tell him I sent you. He'll be really nice to you.
Okay, so also Esme is asking, how do you keep your concepts analog but at the same time relevant and fresh? Like, where do you get your inspiration to make it practical?
Well, even though I guess I'm seeing a lot of inspiration online, like it's through a picture or a digital image or through an email where someone's describing what they're doing, we're always talking about something that's actually physical and made, because Uppercase Magazine and books is about things that are made. So we are, it's always an analog topic, and we just happen to communicate about it initially in a digital way, but then it becomes an analog thing in that it's a physical printed story in the end. How to make it practical? I think if you're asking like, how do I see an idea and then turn that idea into an article or print project, I think that might be what the question is. Well, it's taken many years to understand how to do that, because when I first started the magazine, I was a graphic designer and I was not an editor or a writer. But writing and editing are certainly skills that I have learned on the job as I go along. And part of that skill of being an editor is recognizing when something would make a good story or a good article. And that's definitely something I've learned over the years. And it's gotten easier, which is why I'm able to do multiple projects now, because I kind of honed some of those skills.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Esme. I have kind of like based on the inspiration thing, is there any type trends that you look at? Do you see anything coming out in the world of publishing or in any of the craft and creative communities that you're seeing?
Well, over the years, I've definitely seen that independent magazines are a trend, which is great. In an interview, I was called the old goat of independent publishing. Which, like, what? I don't even know what that means, but I assumed it meant because I've been around for a while now. Like, there's been a lot that have come and gone, and I'm still trucking here. So that was definitely a trend. I don't know if it's as on its peak right now, but certainly a couple of years ago, and new magazines were definitely a trend. Typographically now in magazines, I'm seeing that sans serif, lowercase, blocky bold type is a thing. It's a thing right now. I don't know. I've seen it on the newsstand, but I don't really do that in my magazine because I just don't have the white space to do some of those trendy things.
So are you saying that you're seeing a bit of a path going away from the hand lettering because everything was chalk and mural and hand? Mm-hmm.
I think the hand lettering is once all the hand lettering was amazing, gorgeous, and original, and then they all became fonts, and then the quality when you see it in font form is like the fonts themselves might be great and beautifully rendered, but when someone who doesn't know really how to use the font properly starts pretending that they're a hand letter by using a font, then it starts to kind of degrade the quality overall. So I think that trend is waning a little bit. But I'm still all for gorgeous hand lettering and calligraphy. I love it. I've got lots of examples behind me from previous projects.
I'm all for anything that can be done really well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and Tracy is asking, did you do any more education classes beside your graphic design background, like for the writing and editing?
No, I learned a lot about writing and editing by being a graphic designer. I worked on book publishing projects, for example, and so you would design this book and then their copy editor would come in and, oh, you got to go make all these changes. And I was the one who had to input all of those changes. So I learned all about grammar by having to repeatedly enter all these niggly little typographic changes into manuscripts. So I learned a lot that way about editing. And I learned a lot about writing through communications, like writing emails to clients, for example, and writing presentations and learning how to clearly articulate myself in the printed form. And I learned a lot from being a freelance designer about marketing, for example, because I would do a lot of the materials, say, for Calgary Opera or an arts festival. And so all of the different steps that are required to promote something, I learned a lot from working on those events. So a lot of that, like on the job training. And then when I had the art gallery, I learned a lot about hosting a show, and I learned about curating, and I learned about greeting card design by having my own cards and wholesaling those. So I just learn by doing and observing and following people that are inspiring to me. And then as far as other training, I don't have any, except a couple years ago, I took a B school, which is like a Marie Forleo B school thing.
Yeah.
And it really changed my business into a positive way. It was like really, I was in dire straits, and it totally helped me out. So now I'm like an affiliate for that. A couple years ago, it's a little weird, but it totally works. And it was that was the missing aspect that I didn't have for all those years after graduating from college and running my own freelance. But I had no training in business. I didn't really understand how to market a business and grow a business. So taking that course was really kind of the missing link for figuring out how to really make it work. So that's
the fun thing about being a graphic designer is you work with clients and on projects in so many different verticals, many different industries. You really learn a lot through that. I agree with you. I learned a lot of writing and editing just by having to read the copy before I said it, right? You just get to know the tone and understand what's working, what's not working. And also asking the copywriter to change the word count so it fits into the design a lot of times. But yeah.
People are sometimes surprised, oh, you're a designer who reads. Like, why wouldn't you read? Like, you need to read. But yeah, it's important to know what you're actually designing, right down to the periods and the commas.
Definitely. I mean, the design is dictated by the content, so you guys should know the content for sure. I always find that when you are a designer, it's better to know more about one thing or many things because it helps to feed your point of view, right? As a heart surgeon, you wouldn't try different areas of surgery just to like explore. But that's a great thing about being a designer is we get to try many different things and learn that way. So thank you, Tracy. I hope we answered your question. We'll answer some questions in the chat bar, and then we're going to stop in about 10 minutes, guys. Oh, and I also just wanted to...
Sorry.
That's okay. I mentioned that that you had some construction near you guys. So just if you heard some beeping, it wasn't her alarm clock going off or anything like that.
That was the fire engine.
that one was, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kelly was asking, can you share some of your organizational tools? What technology do you use to simplify life and work?
The biggest thing I use all day long, every day, is Evernote. So I've been using that since issue 2 or 3 of the magazine. So it's really kind of my external brain dump. There's a lot in there. So I use that to collect my ideas and the links or screenshots from Instagram, like things that are inspiring me, and I put it in Evernote. And I have a system of tagging what the general subject matter is, and then specific tags or interests that I might be looking for later. And then I can start seeing what I'm interested in and grouping it together and planning an issue. And then so I plan all of the issues through Evernote. And I also use it to gather information that I need to share, say, with my printer. Like right now I'm working on the shipping and logistics list for Little U. Like we printed a number, like 8,000 copies, and now they need to know where all those are going. So in Evernote, I can put like this number goes here and this number goes here and here's the mailing label, and I can put it all in one spot. So Evernote is my tool of choice right now and has been for a long time.
Great. And then Anna's asking, how did you decide on the format size of the magazine?
For Uppercase, it was I remember looking at Martha Stewart Living magazine and liking that size, but not quite, and kind of adjusting from there. And I wanted something that was large, but could still be easily mailed and such. So it was kind of, and then practical, like what is the good use of the sheet size so that I'm economizing on paper. So it's kind of all those factors. And then it had to have enough pages in it so that I could have a spine on the magazine. So the amount of content was originally dictated that I had to have a spine on the magazine.
Priorities.
Yeah, and then little U, I wanted something like just small and cute and kind of like Big Little books, if you remember those, that were like fat little tiny bricks. So that's where this idea came from. And I had published another book, I think 2008, that was this same format. And this is a really also an economical size when you're printing it, because you can fit lots of pages on one sheet of paper.
That's great. Jean is asking, do you find it hard to constantly be creative every single day?
Well, I don't have to be creative every single day. There are days when I have to just be like total math person or logistics person or writing or like kind of the nitty gritty stuff. So I don't have to be like creative on every single day. And then when I do have to be creative, I guess I've kind of trained myself over all the years that I can be creative on demand as long as I've got like when you think about like I think like a designer, when you need to know your creative brief and like why are you doing it and who's it for and you know what's the deadline, and once I have all that going, then I can be creative within those constraints. I'm not very good at like open-ended creativity. Like that's when I was in art college, it was always really difficult when we were given an assignment to like illustrate this thing, but like why and who's it for, and like I just always needed to turn my projects into design projects, and those are the constraints that allow me to be creative.
You need to have a purpose behind your design so you know what you're communicating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie is asking, what is the most important lesson you have learned during your publishing journey? Those are huge questions. That's a huge one.
A lesson? Well, hard work is worth it. Like I don't know if that's a lesson, but it is. It's like if you put in the hard work and you're genuine about it, people will notice, I think. So that's what I've learned, that it's worth it for me to work really hard. Yeah.
That's great. So I have one or two last questions and then we'll finish up. So what I feel that you're doing in terms of publishing all the books and all those passion projects that you have, you're doing them, let's see, I mean, this is your full-time job, sort of, right? I mean, that's basically what you do. Yeah, and then so, yeah. So do you have free time, and what do you do during your free time? Because you're doing the things that like we do during our free time.
Well, free time is with my son, for example, or doing family things. And sometimes free time is related to Uppercase. Like the fabric designs, for example, I have to come up with some quilt projects, for example, or sewing projects. And I like doing that. Like that's fun time. Yeah, the downtime usually does have some sort of Uppercase related thing in it, because the creative stuff and craft and things, those are things that I just love to do anyway. So I guess it's always on in one way or another. But you know, as long as I go and have some time completely away for like even a couple of days, like a nice weekend with not doing any work at all, that's just very refreshing. And I don't need too much downtime to have a good break and get motivated to start up again.
So your free time feeds your work time. Do you feel like that's because you're an entrepreneur, or do you feel like that's because you are creative?
I think it's first and foremost because I'm creative, and I take it literally that I like to be creating something, like to be making something. That's just part of who I am. So yeah, and now that like the entrepreneur part is something that I've grown to really love, as I've been doing things that are entrepreneurial. So now they're wrapped up together, but being creative is first and foremost.
Well, what you've done is so inspiring to me and all of us, and not because you've accomplished it, but because of what you've created. Just gorgeous, and we always look forward to it every month. So, thank you, Janine. I really appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
today and hanging out with us. And thanks everyone who's here in the group. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and I really appreciate it. So we look forward to Little You. A lot of people were saying they're really excited to get in the mail.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's also sort of pending in your brain, maybe something that's still an Evernote that might come to fruition? Give us a little hint.
Um, well, I'm trying to work in advance on future issues of the magazine, and issue 40 is coming up. That's the January, February, March issue for next year, but I have to work on it this year. And so that's the 10-year mark for Uppercase.
Yay.
And that's going to be exciting. And I want the content to be all about readers and subscribers. So if you're a reader or subscriber of Uppercase and you want to be in that issue, then zap me an email and introduce yourself and tell me what you like and what you do and how you think you could contribute. And I'll have more specific like open calls for that in a while, but that's the one that I'm starting to really wrap my brain about, is like, how can the magazine be entirely reader created in a way?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So the best way to reach you is through Twitter
uppercasemagazine.com. And then there's a participate page if you want to submit something. And then I would say Instagram is where I'm at more often than Twitter these days. And so I have Instagram, Uppercase Mag, and then Little U Mag.
Great. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us. And Janine, you have a good day, and we look forward to more. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.